Freeway Rick Ross has gotten to be a good friend of mine. He's been on the show many times over the years, usually in studio. And we're going to have him with us halfway to the next hour. Then Matt Bracken takes over. He just drove down to Dallas, got stuck in some traffic, but better late than never. FreewayRickRoss.com. He's one of the biggest cocaine kingpins ever busted in this country. And then it turned out he was working for the CIA. That's all declassified. That's all admitted. And Gary Webb, who got shot twice in the back of the head with a shotgun, he had his new book coming out that was going to vindicate him. Well, he got killed. Well, the film came out a few years ago and Kill the Messenger, and I actually got physically sick watching it because I knew Gary Webb, and I knew how accurate the film was. It blew me away. Here's the trailer for Kill the Messenger.
Gary Webb, sounds like Mercury News.
You believe in conspiracy theories, Gary?
No, I don't believe in conspiracy theories. Conspiracies, yes. If I believe it, there's nothing theory about it.
Was the government aware that you were smuggling tons of cocaine into the United States?
Yes, the government knew.
This leads to very sensitive national security matters.
National security and crack cocaine in the same sentence. Does that not sound strange to you?
I'm going to tell you the whole truth. I'm going to introduce you to people you should talk to. And then you will be faced with the most important decision of your life.
Oh, yeah? What's that?
Deciding whether to share it or not.
One of the DEA's most wanted brought in thousands of kilos of cocaine to the U.S. every day. For them.
For who?
The U.S. government. Or with them. Or at least while they were looking the other way.
Jesus.
L.A., New York, Atlanta. I couldn't sell it fast enough to keep up with supply.
Fancy information you have there. Dangerous. What you found here, Gary, is a monster. You have no idea what you're getting into.
Do you really tell me that I should just walk away from this?
You'd be an idiot not to.
This story scares people.
I'm your big brother. Well, it should.
Be careful.
There are ongoing operations you're in danger of exposing. We know you were in Nicaragua. Am I being followed?
I heard they found a solution. Where you be for the revolution?
I thought my job was to tell the public the truth, the facts, pretty or not. And let the publishing of those facts make a difference in how people look at things, at themselves, at what they stand for.
We'd never threaten your children, Mr. Webb.
What'd you say?
It's over.
I'm not finished with it! Not finished! This is a true story. Some stories are just too true to tell.
Where you be for the revolution?
Kill the Messenger. And this thing goes so deep. The real Rick Ross is here. There was a big fat jail guard who basically stole his identity and then said he was the kingpin. But Rick Ross is a really nice guy. He can tell you how he got into it. Oh, soon he didn't know why he was the biggest coke dealer in the United States because the CIA was delivering it to him. But it's good to see you again. It's been about a year or two since you've been in here. Yeah. What are we going to hit on when we come back? Because, you know, we never script any of this.
Well, you know, we some of the stuff that I'm doing now. You know, we're just going to, you know, it's been about 2-3 years since we last interviewed.
A lot's happening. And for those that don't know, though, we'll recap your story as well.
Yeah, we can do that. We can recap.
What was it like watching Kill the Messenger? Because, you know, I'd interviewed you some, and I knew Gary pretty good. We were to build a website together. He'd been on the show a lot. And then all of a sudden, he was executed. I mean, he was really excited before he died. He had this big book coming out. Guess the book never came out, though.
I spoke to him about a month or two before he got killed or died or whatever.
Got Epsteined?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. And, you know, I was also working at that time. You know, Kevin Booth, a friend of me and yours, me and him was doing a documentary called The Great White Hope. And he's the one that told me the first time that Gary had gotten killed and or that he was dead, committed suicide. I don't know which one.
Well, the police say 2 gunshots pretty normal. Shoot yourself twice in the head.
Yeah, that's what they had a doctor to say that.
If I ever get shot twice in the head, it wasn't me. If I get shot once in the head, it wasn't me.
Remember when you interviewed me in jail? That's what you asked me. You know, one of the first things you asked me, you were like, Rick, how do you feel? And I was like, what do you mean? And I was trying to figure out what you was getting at. And then you was like, you don't feel suicidal, do you? And I was like, hell no. I'm enjoying life. Even though I'm in prison, I still like life. And you was like, oh, I just wanted to check and make sure, you know, we don't want nothing to happen to you in there.
Hey, man,
you don't remember that.
They threaten to kill me all the time. We'll be right back with the real Rick Ross in studio. Infowars.com. Tomorrow's news today. Riding with Rick, The 21 Keys of Success. Rick Ross, new book. Find the book at freewayrickross.com. A lot of big films made about what happened to him. A lot of big documentaries. But I always like you to be able to hear it directly from the individual's mouth himself. So we'll get more into things that are currently happening, fentanyl, the drug wars, all of it with Rick Ross here. But again, he was good friends with Gary Webb, who was an award-winning journalist, absolutely vindicated, who was executed, assassinated, because he had a book coming out vindicating everything he'd said. They tried to assassinate his character, broke in his house, threatened him. That was all on record. He was so excited to get ready to come on the show. When his book was coming out in a month, he'd sent me a CD with all his info to put up a website, and they killed him. They even saw men climbing down climbing out of his house a month before. He'd even moved because they kept breaking in his house. Like a couple commandos spilling out and climbing down the side of the house. And then his good friends came out and said, oh, no, he committed suicide. Those are the type of friends you don't need. But Rick Ross is here with us. Recap what happened to you and the hypocrisy of it. And again, I don't like illegal drugs. I don't like drug dealing because of all the stuff that goes with it and happens with it. But my great-great-great-grandfather was one of the first cocaine dealers in the United States. He helped invent Dr. Pepper in Temple, Texas. His last name was Gresham. And, of course, his ancestors started Texas, but he was a good guy. But Dr. Pepper was the first soda drink to be mass distributed, and he invented the name. It was the drugstore apothecary that actually developed it. It was his favorite. And they said, well, what do you name it? Dr. Pepper. And then he ran the first ads, and then they had the big bottling thing up in Temple, a little bit of lore you'll never get. But my point is, Big Pharma, with all the hillbilly heroin and all this and the Ritalin for kids, I mean, really, they're the bigger drug dealers than you ever were. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, even like you was just saying now with the opioids addiction, all the doctors who been prescribing people, dentists who's been prescribing people opioids and got us hooked on opioids right now. It's crazy, the epidemic that we're going through right now, and it's worked in the cocaine epidemic. Tell people briefly your story, how you got into it. Because I remember you described it as like suddenly, boom, you're a giant drug dealer. Yeah. I started off, when I started, I knew absolutely nothing about cocaine. One of my friends went to college and somebody introduced him to it. He came from college and we felt that he was doing well because he was playing on the college football team. He was a star and he had all the answers. So when he told me that cocaine was going to be the next biggest thing, I believed it, and I jumped right into it, full steam ahead. I started off with $125, had days that I made as much as $1 million a day for like 2 years, and days I made as much as $3 million. I mean, it's a situation where any kid in any ghetto, it's easy to be drawn into that environment. You're talking about people who don't have food to eat, don't have normal clothes, and everybody wants to be somebody of significance. None of us want to be an outcast. Plus, Hollywood glamorized it. Absolutely. I didn't even think about that part. Hollywood, when you talk about some of the movies, Superfly, Tequila Sunrise, Scarface, The Godfather, you see people who come over to this country and they basically have nothing, and then with the help of drugs, or where they make it look like it's drugs, they start to control the whole world or the country. And I mean, who doesn't want a part of that? I mean, well, changing consciousness is something humans have done from the very beginning. And coffee's a serious drug. If you take something like Chill Force or Brain Force, it's Mother Nature, and it's overall good for you. But I mean, make no mistake, it's a altered, it's something that alters consciousness. But when did you start discovering that the reason you were being left alone and were, dealing $15 million a week or whatever at some points of cocaine, that the CIA was using you as one of their street level, major capos in distribution? Well, I didn't know that until after I got arrested, after Danilo Blandon set me up. Danilo Blandon set me up. So once I got arrested and we started going through the trial, me and Alan Finster, he gets a call one day and he says, this reporter says that he's following our informant. So first of all, we didn't know if he had the right informant, because there's a lot of informants. And he started to describe this guy to me, and
he said, well, Gary Webb wants to come down and meet you in person into the prison. Do you want to meet him? And I was like, yeah. So Gary came down, and let me tell you, Gary was a very, very cool guy. Somebody that you feel comfortable being around, not threatening, not boastful, just, a down-to-earth, jean-wearing, tennis shoe guy that he would make you feel comfortable. Somebody that you would trust. And after we talked that first day, he came down maybe about 4 or 5 more times. Gary didn't give me much information. The deal was when we talked on the phone that he was going to help me with my case, and he had information for me. But really what he did on those first interviews was just decipher what I had, the information that I knew.
Why do you think they burned you?
Well, if I would have been out on the street free, and this case hit the fan, I would have been more credible. Because what they tried to do is they tried to make this story as if I created this story. One of the things that Gary did with them is he said that I would have had to been really, really creative to create the paper trail that went along with the story. And just for the record, I didn't create the story. I'm not the one that came up with the idea about the CIA. I knew absolutely nothing.
Well, they've now, as you know, years after even Gary's death, Gary Webb's death, that Iran-Contra, all this, they had hearings confirming it all in the Congress.
Absolutely. I saw the paperwork. I got a folder from the CIA themselves, and this is, I guess this is kind of when I really because I really didn't believe it either. I read in the newspaper when the paper came out, and I was like, no, not me with the CIA. No way possible. I'm a rebel. I was against the government. I didn't want to be with the government. So then when the CIA themselves said that, yes, we knew these guys were selling drugs, but we didn't sanction it. We didn't sanction them selling drugs, but we knew they were selling drugs, and they were part of our army. And we went to Attorney General to write a letter and ask her that we not have to report these guys selling drugs. So when I saw that, it was kind of like, hold up now. If you go with your same conspiracy theory, that I was in prison on, because I never got caught with drugs. Only thing that I got caught with was guys saying, oh, well, this day Rick had 10 keys. The other day I saw him, a year ago, I saw him sell 20 keys to this guy. I saw him sell 10 keys. I saw him with $50,000. I saw him with $100,000. And that's the kind of evidence that I was convicted on. So my theory is that if you went with that same type of evidence with this conspiracy for the Iran-Contra Nicaragua connection, then these guys could have been convicted under those same circumstances. So that was my theory.
So basically, to try to cover up the larger story, they claim you were the guy with the story and that you were just a drug dealer who'd concocted it.
Right. That was the LA Times, who
it turned out was being run by the CIA.
Yeah, Gary, Jesse Katz, who was a friend of mine, had written stories before about me. They hired him to go against Gary Webb. And you see in the documentary, he's in the documentary apologizing for what he did to Gary. He felt that he probably was one of the ones that drove a knife through Gary's heart by writing the story that he wrote.
Well, they just had the hearings confirming I keep saying North, think about Oliver North, the whole thing, Gary Webb. And he had that new book coming out that never got published, proving he was right. And then that's when he conveniently dies. It's a real tragedy. Well,
we know that the CIA confirmed Gary's story. I mean, now they didn't say, well, this particular agent or this particular president or this vice president or this general okayed it, but they said that we as a whole knew that these guys were selling drugs.
And how it worked was to buy the weapons from the U.S. clandestinely. They let them ship the drugs in and then have you and others sell them.
Right. Well, what they needed, Congress had outlawed them giving money to the Contras. So what they needed is they needed a source where this money was coming from, where Congress couldn't tell that the money was being given or was being raised. So what better way to do it than to raise it on the black market?
Absolutely. And you go back to Iran-Contra and all of that. Of course, it all later came out in Congress, not just in the 80s, but in the 90s. And more of it's come out today And then we see China trying to ship in 25,000 tons, enough to kill 10 billion plus people with a lethal dose. And this is just the way governments fight wars. And so we need to talk about the fact that the black community was particularly a dumping site for the cocaine to raise the money. So why would that be done? We'll be right back with hour number 4 with Freeway Rick Ross.
Resistance to tyrants is obedience to God. It's Alex Jones.
You're with us another 30 minutes, and let's get you back again sooner to talk about all these big issues and big news stories that are out there. And
let's do it.
I don't want to get into the type of stuff that, is just the gossip column stuff, but I do like to talk about stuff where people have had their identity stolen. And Rick Ross is not his name. He's a jail guard. He knew about your story. It's admitted that he stole your identity. And you brought this up the third or fourth time I interviewed you, one time in studio, because I guess you even get it like, you're not the real Rick Ross, it's this guy from his songs and what he says. So it's not that you're putting that guy down. I think it's important for you to spend a few minutes on the fact that you are Rick Ross.
Absolutely. My mom named me that.
Yeah.
Born here in Texas. Kilgore.
That's right.
My birth certificate says Rick Ross. So for everybody who don't know that, I didn't change my name. I was born Rick Ross, and I made Rick Ross famous by going to court. I wish he would have went to court and come into the judge and said, "Oh, I'm Rick Ross. He's not Rick Ross," when I was going to court, but he didn't do that.
He was a jail guard.
Yeah.
The fake Rick Ross.
Yeah, jail guard.
What's his real name?
William Roberts. But that's not the worst part. I got a judgment against me for $700,000 because I tried to sue to stop him from using my name and to stop Universal and Warner Brothers from using my name.
And then they went back with the court fees against you.
Right. They made me pay the attorney fees. I don't know how I lost the case, but, well, you know how that goes when you're fighting with big corporations.
But how's old Rick Ross doing today? The fake one.
I don't know. I don't really keep up with him, I mean, he's still making fake music, selling it to the kids, telling them what a great drug dealer he was, and that you can go out and sell drugs and parlay that into a record career and live happily ever after.
What do you want to tell kids? Because you travel the country. I should have said that up front, helping kids and keeping them away from drugs. And, you really reversing some of the things you could say that were bad.
Well, selling drugs, you really got two ends to that. There's no rainbow with a pot of gold at the end of that rainbow. Usually it's a set of handcuffs or the graveyard. Very few people are able to get into the drug business, the black market, and come out on top. It's usually the other way around. You usually come up dead or in jail for a really, really long time.
I was about to say, this is a short segment, we'll have a long one coming up. Hey, you did probably thousands of big deals. How did you stay alive?
Well, usually when I did deals with people that I could trust somewhat. I mean, you never know who's going to be the one to turn on you or anything like that, because it was my next door neighbor who really corroborated the evidence to convict me. But you really got to be a good judgment of people. You got to be a good judgment of character. You got to always put yourself in a position to win. Like you don't do deals in places that you don't know about. You don't allow somebody to take you into the back of a big warehouse that you've never been, or in the back of a woods and do a deal. I would do my deals in shopping center parking lots, where it was really visible and a lot of people would be around. I mean, a lot of people don't like doing deals like that, but I felt more comfortable with, doing it in public locations where if something went down, a lot of people would see what was going on.
Did you ever have somebody pull something on you?
I've been beat a lot, but usually, the way I did it is you wouldn't have to rob me because I would give it to you in your hand, and then it was up to you to bring my money back or not. Consignment is what they call it in the drug business.
Plus, if they were smart, they do it over and over again instead of just stealing it once.
Right. Well, you figure, you might make some money one time, but if you, do it like I did for 8 years, then you make a lot of money. One time you make a little money, but if you can, it's
no, but in any business, you run into people that would rather screw you one time. They like just get off on it.
Right.
They just can't help it.
Yeah. But in any business, it's better to be consistent and to do what you're supposed to do, and you'll have repeated business.
So there's even a layer of morals in drug dealing. We'll be right back with the real Rick Ross. I'm Alex Jones, and I am the real Alex Jones. Not Bill Hicks, folks. We'll be right back. Kingpin drug dealer, cocaine dealer in America. Freeway Rick Ross, if you just missed it, he travels the country teaching kids, don't get into drug dealing, don't get into corruption. But I just had one of the producers mentioning in Dave Chappelle's new special, he says that, hey, crack cocaine targeted black people, so I'm kind of glad the heroin epidemic's targeting white people. Well, is that even true? Plus, the average white person didn't know that, didn't support it. It's the same big pharma. A lot of that's Chinese control. It's not about white people, black people, in my view, even though some of it was done from a racist perspective. It's about big corporations exploiting people, and then they use low-level people to carry it out and then get the blame. In fact, maybe we can find that clip, but what do you think of Chappelle's making that statement?
Well, with drugs, you can't just say that this is for blacks or this is for whites. Now, in the crack epidemic, blacks were targeted by the police to get arrested.
Longer sentences.
And longer sentences, but whites used cocaine just as much or more than blacks did. So that's definitely not a true statement. Now, if he would have said that, well, they were arresting blacks more than they were arresting whites, that would have been a true statement. But no, it's not. And as for the heroin epidemic, it's not. If it's whites that are doing it now, it's not going to stay that way. It's going to trickle down to the rest of society, because that's just the way drugs work. It may start with one person, but it's like a virus. It has its way of getting introduced.
Well, I've been down to Skid Row in L.A., and it's I'd say about half white, maybe like 40% black, and maybe 10% Asian. There's a lot of black folks on heroin down there.
Yeah. It affects everybody. I mean, it's an epidemic, and when you're dealing with epidemics, I mean, you know, we have to try to get out of the black and white concept, because it's a universal epidemic.
I agree. What do you think of Trump trying to reverse the Democrat policies of the 90s when Hillary said blacks are super predators, got to be brought to heel? I don't know if you've ever seen that quote. And then Trump is trying to reverse that right now.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's a good thing. We definitely need.
See, the media won't even give him credit.
Yeah,
but that's why Kanye West went there and like got him to do that.
Yeah. Well, I know Kim Kardashian has been working with him as well.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, TMZ had hit me up one day about her doing that. She was getting Lyft rides for inmates, for people who are getting out of prison. And they asked me how did I feel about it, and I told her I thought it was a wonderful thing, because when people get out of prison, you've been in prison 20, 30 years, most of your family probably dead, you probably don't have any friends, and you don't have any resources. So any resources that we can give inmates to help them stay out of trouble, I think is a great thing.
Let me ask you this. Not trying to get you in trouble with the Trump statement, but just wondering, what was your view of Trump before he ran for president, and then what the media turned into once he did?
Well, I read a couple of books on Trump when I was in prison, and I don't know. I felt I use his books. I use some of his techniques now, but the way he's being portrayed on the news right now is villainary.
Villainary. That's a good word. Well, they do it to me. I mean, they say I wrote a book about Sandy Hook and harassed families. I never wrote a book about Sandy Hook. They say I lost a suit. That's AP. That's not true. None of it's true. They say I lost an appeal yesterday. I didn't.
Yeah.
They just lie. I mean, I'm saying levels of lies. When you're experiencing it yourself, then you know how big it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of times with us as people, we don't believe certain things until they absolutely affect us personally. You know, we go along with it, but then when it affects our family personally is when we start to notice that it's not right.
You travel all over the country, because I see you popping up here, there.
I do.
Speaking to kids, I mean, you've done a lot of good for any bad that you got sucked into. I mean, how many schools, how many colleges have you talked to and explained that drugs aren't glamorous?
Oh my God, hundreds of schools, and I would do more if they would let me. But you know, we still had that stigma about drug dealers. You know, like you're not reformed, even though you did 20, 30 years in prison. You're still not reformed. You're still a drug dealer. But
the kids are really going to listen to the drug,
oh, no,
famous kingpin.
They want it. They want it. They want to know, you know, how did it happen? How did you get started? Who? Like, I just did a school in Kansas City last week, and I did a survey with the kids. You know, I just started asking them, you know, okay, can anybody here tell me who introduced you to drugs first? Because this was a school where all the kids had been on drugs before. This was a drug school where kids had been suspended from school for using drugs, and they started raising their hands, and they were saying, oh, my uncle turned me on. Oh, my dad.
It's usually family.
It's usually family. It's not some strange guy, that's in the park, wearing a hood and hiding out behind the benches. Hey, little kid, come here. Let me introduce you. That's not how it happens. And I had to explain that to the teachers, that most of these kids got hooked on drugs from somebody that they trusted, from somebody that they love. And that's something that families need to know as well, that your kid is not going to get hooked on drugs by some stranger. It's going to be his uncle, his auntie, his big brother, his sister. Just like with me, the guy who introduced me to drugs was like my big brother. He was that brother that I didn't have. And I looked up to him. I thought that he was right. I thought he knew what he was doing, and he got me started.
Well, that's the way it is with so many things. But think about Big Pharma. They sell drugs that are worse than cocaine, as bad as heroin, and they're pushing it in schools. They're pushing it everywhere. Something like 30% of women are antidepressants. Those drugs say on the insert, they eat holes in your brain. They make your heart swell. They lower your IQ. They can cause you to become a mass murderer. And it says on the insert, and then almost every one of these crazy mass shooters is on it.
Well, those drugs dealers should be responsible. They could be held responsible for those shootings. I mean, technically, if they go with the conspiracy theory, because with the conspiracy theory, if I hand you the gun and you go out and do a shooting, I'm responsible. So if I'm prescribing drugs, if I'm paying doctors, because that's what they do, they pay doctors to subscribe drugs to people. The more drugs you subscribe people to, the bigger your bonus is going to be. So technically, they're...
Oh, exactly. I mean, if anybody's ever seen how beautiful these female drug reps are at these doctors' offices, and I'm telling you, let me tell you, those beautiful female drug reps, they're not just getting bonuses, they're having sex with the doctors. If they sell enough, they get the,
So you get the rep too, huh?
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised, because, I mean, at the end of the day, is these people are strictly, they like I was when I was selling drugs. I was strictly dealing for the money. I didn't care about human life, how it was going to affect anybody else. The only thing I really cared about was
CBS News, Pfizer drug sells having sex with doctors.
Wow.
Keep going, sorry.
So when you're in that state of mind where you don't really value people, you only value the money, then you don't really care what happens to the people.
Man, that's so crazy. And
we have to change that. We have to change and we have to start with our kids to where, now we value life and not just the buck.
I agree. That's what I've said is they're going to shut up about these mass shootings that are terrible, but still statistically very, very rare compared to all these other things that kill you. As soon as people start suing the drug makers of the drugs that most of these people are on that say they actually make you do it, that's when they're going to change the subject off the average gun owner and blaming us. In fact, I have a statistic here. This is a big meme going viral. 10,874 people killed by drunk drivers in 2017, and 403 by rifles. Walmart stopped selling rifles, still sells alcohol. That's real numbers. Real numbers. The latest, the numbers are always 2 years behind. And so mass shootings might kill 150 people a year. If you count gang-related, it's 300, 350. Still terrible. But 10,000 from drunk drivers. We're not saying, they shouldn't sell alcohol, because some people are doing it responsibly. It's the person, what they do with the alcohol that's at fault, not the alcohol, just like it's not the gun's fault.
Good point. Good point.
I think we need to go on the offense against these drug makers, because enough fentanyl to kill 10 billion, 600 and something million people got caught being shipped to the U.S.
Well, we already know that alcohol and cigarettes kill more people than all illegal drugs put together. You can combine all the illegal drugs together, and they still don't kill as many people as alcohol and cigarettes. So we definitely have some issues, but, we got to change our politicians. Our politicians are on the take as well. They're getting paid by these big companies, and they're going to make decisions to benefit the companies.
We got to start caring about each other again. And like you said, the cigarette makers get caught putting hundreds of chemicals in that are drugs, that are more addictive than cocaine. It's not tobacco. You're addicted to the chemicals they're adding to it. And are they in trouble? We need to look at all of this. Final segment with the real Freeway Rick Ross straight ahead. We'll get into his book, Riding with Rick, the 21 Keys of Success. We'll be back on the other side. I'm Alex Jones. Please spread the links to newswars.com and infowars.com. If you don't, they win. The real Rick Ross is here, riding with Rick. The 21 Keys of Success. Sounds kind of like a Trumpian book. I'm going to read this book. Tell me about it. Tell me about the book.
Well, the book was wrote about my first 6 months out of prison. And, getting out of prison, I didn't know nobody. I didn't have any money. I was homeless for a couple months. My mom had lost her house. She had took one of those subprime loans out. She had her house was free and clear when I went to prison. And she went and borrowed a couple $100,000. And I think the broker took like $80,000 out of the loan right off the top.
It's unbelievable.
And she wound up losing her house right when I got home from prison. I think I was home for about 6 months, and she had owed, I think like $48,000, and they was like, "We need the whole $48,000 right now."
And that's the real crux, to have an old lady, and you take 40% of the loan as a brokerage fee and rip them off.
Yeah.
I would see like 10% as a rip off of that poor old lady. How the hell do guys do that?
And what really got her is that they started the loan off at $1,200 a month. So she could afford that. But it escalated. It ballooned to $3,200 a month, which was totally out of her range. When I got home, Alex, she didn't have food to eat because she was trying to pay the mortgage.
Did you know it was Larry Summers and Bill Clinton changed the laws for all that loan sharking?
No, I didn't know.
Now in places like Arkansas that had some of the strongest laws against payday loans and usury, they've gotten rid of all those laws.
Well, that's a good thing, because so many people lost their homes. I mean...
No. And I'm saying they got rid of the laws protecting people.
Oh, they got rid of the laws protecting people? Yeah, that was...
I'm not trying to bash Bill Clinton. It's just that super evil stuff came out of it.
Well, what it is, you just call it what it is. You call it what it is. If it's a spade, it's a spade. Who did it? Who cares who did it? You say who did it?
Man, I would be so afraid of God, because I know God's real. If I was ripping off old ladies, these people are crazy doing that. Man, do they have any idea how bad luck they're getting? You're going to pay in this life. You're going to pay after.
But some of the people they already rich. They got more money than sin. They can't spend all the money they got already. Why do they continue to take from?
Why don't you give all the old ladies the best deal, and then you get them all in a little percentage? Why would you want to screw them over?
Right.
I don't understand that.
Yeah.
But it goes back to the business thing.
Yeah, it's crazy. But that's how this book came about. And my friend Cody, who I had sent him these 3 books that I had read, my favorite 3 books, Think and Grow Rich, The Richest Man in Babylon, and As a Man Think, to read. And he read the books. So when I got out, we were riding around, and he saw me using these principles, and he was like, "Man, these must be the principles that you use to be so successful." And he was documenting everything, and the book just came about like that there. So it's 21 keys, my 21 most important keys. We started off with the number 1, what we thought were the most important, which was being humble. It's very important for us to be humble as people, because when you're humble, people like you. They don't mind working with you. But when you're boastful, when you are overbearing, people have a resentment for you. They don't really want to be around you. So we felt that being humble was the most important.
And if you're mentally humble, it doesn't cloud your judgment.
Yeah.
These guys that get on a power trip, I noticed they're not thinking too smart.
Right. And you have to have an open mind, because if you don't have an open mind, you can't visualize the future. You can't see what's coming. And you wind up being stagnated. So that's how the book came about. And
give me some more principles. I can't wait to read it.
You have to study. You have to be somebody who, once you find out whatever the field is that you're going into, you have to learn as much about it as you can. One of the things that I found out about myself, and I didn't really understand that, but when I first started selling cocaine, I knew absolutely nothing about cocaine. I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't know what it smelled like. I didn't know the color. I was a novice.
But that's a good rule. You didn't get high on your own supply.
No, I didn't. Well, they taught me that, though. I was taught by the people.
Don't take it.
Don't take it. If you don't take it, you're going to be rich. So I didn't take it. And that's one of the other things that I learned about drugs, too, as well. Most people who get involved with drugs don't get involved with drugs to become addicts. Most of the people who get involved with drugs get in it for the money. but they believe that they're stronger, that their willpower is stronger than the drug. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh, I understand.
That they can take it.
They play with fire.
Exactly. So, and that's how most people be.
Well, that's like me now. I just don't drink, period. I made a big deal about it on air, but I just don't drink. And that's why I joke around sometimes. I'm being stupid. I'm like, oh, I'm drunk. But no, I mean, because I'll quit drinking and I'll start drinking, not a lot. All of a sudden I'm drinking a lot. I just don't drink now.
Yeah, you got to.
It's much easier. Just zip. Never again. It's over.
You know, and people ask me that too about drugs. They're like, okay, well, if I can control the drug, I said, no, you can't control the drug. You have to quit totally, and you never go back. And if you go back, you didn't really quit. You only slowed down. So it's a difference in slowing down and quitting. And
then it dominates your life with anything. Because alcohol's a drug, a deadly drug. Your whole life's about you want it, you need it, or you're not going to have it, you're going to have it. And it's just like, no, you're not in my life.
Right, right. With anything. I mean, it could be a woman, a man. If somebody is
no,
not...
you're right. Alcohol's like an evil woman. Or for a woman, it might be like an evil man. Like, it's just great when it ain't in your life anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you have to just, like leave it. I mean, that's the way I had to do with cocaine, because I loved selling cocaine. I fell in love with it. Mine had got to the point where it wasn't about the money anymore. The money wasn't my high anymore. My high was selling a lot of drugs.
Being number one.
Being number one. How much drugs can I sell? How many kilos can I get rid of today? How many kilos am I going to be able to get rid of tomorrow? And it wasn't about how much money was I making, because I didn't care. You know, I had everything that I wanted, but I still had that intensity, that passion.
Drive.
To do more. I want to do more. I want to do more tomorrow than I did yesterday. I want to do more next week. You know, I want to be bigger next week than I am today.
And the CIA had all you needed.
More and cheaper. So
they were like trying to sell you so much you couldn't even move it. They're like,
slow down.
Did you ever tell them slow down?
Yeah, slow down. And that's the way we have to approach our life like that. You know, we have to figure out what are the things in our life that are not doing us any good, and we have to get rid of them.
Rick, we should get you on via Skype at least once a month on my show and others. And anytime you want to come in studio, I'm so glad that you checked in with us. You came here. People can find the great book, Riding with Rick, The 21 Keys to Success. You can come speak to your school, teach kids about not using drugs. Believe me, they'll listen to him a lot more than they'll listen to, you know, the police or their mom. And the website's Freeway, rickross.com. Yes. Thanks for coming in, my friend.
Oh, you already know, man. I ain't never going to forget. You know, I'm not one who forget my friends. And what you did for me when you came down to the prison to check on me, I will never, ever in my life forget that.
Hey, man, you were a big story, and I wanted to expose CIA drug dealing, so you're badass.
Well, I appreciate you.
You had a lot of courage.
I appreciate that, you know, that what you did for me.
I appreciate you, Rick.
All right, thank you.